Now, this first speaker is going to be talking about a scourge that has visited the Caribbean and our efforts here to fight that particular scourge. I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Mark Orr. He joined the Department of Environment in September 2000 as a Marine Park Enforcement Officer. He's worked his way up through the ranks, becoming the Enforcement Supervisor in 2004, and then taking over for the retiring Chief Enforcement Officer in 2007 in the acting capacity, before being confirmed as the Chief Conservation Officer in 2009. Through his work at the DOE, Mark has been at the forefront of the efforts to combat the lionfish invasion in the Cayman Islands since they were first spotted in 2008. His efforts include responding to early reports of single lionfish sightings around the islands, helping design the early spears and containment devices used to cull lionfish, and both participating and assisting in the first lionfish tournaments, which were being organized by a local dive company with the assistance of the DOE. In 2012, Mark teamed up with Jason Washington of Ambassador Divers, who had staged the first 6 lionfish tournaments on Grand Cayman, and other concerned divers and fishermen to form CUL, Cayman United Lionfish League, with the goal of maximizing the efforts to limit the harmful effects of the invasive lionfish by both coordinating larger and more frequent tournaments, and also by spreading the word of how good lionfish are to eat, thereby creating a market for them with local restaurants. So please, without further ado, help me welcome Mr. Mark Orr.
Okay, good morning. Unfortunately, I think you've just heard the first 3 minutes of my speech. I forgot I wrote all that on my intro, on my bio, sorry. But basically, yes, we're here to talk about the lionfish. I'm going to start off by going through a bit of the data on why it's important that these fish be removed from our system, what makes them an invasive species and a danger to our reefs. And I will have a slight disclaimer, as like I said, I'm more on the enforcement side and the cull side, but not as much of a scientist. I may have some facts wrong on here. It was just what I could pull up on the first part, and with the help of Bradley from DOE, who kind of manages the program there. All right. So if no one know, or if anyone doesn't know what a lionfish looks like in the wild, that is one. Lionfish in the Atlantic and Caribbean were first sighted in 1985. They, along with other species, they're sighted each year. Florida has several sightings of invasive species. The big difference with this one over the others is instead of dying off because not having mates, they are the perfect invasive species, as in they reproduce very early, have a lot of eggs, but we'll get into that. So first sighted in 85 in Florida. No one knows exactly where they came from. The two leading theories are that Hurricane Andrew may have washed them out of an aquarium somewhere in lower Florida, or that they just came from the aquarium trade. You can imagine if you've got a 2,000-gallon fish tank, $4,000 worth of fish in there, and all of a sudden you drop one lionfish in, and then you wake up in the morning and 3/4 of your fish are gone. You don't want to kill your brand new baby, so you throw it in a canal. And that's probably more than likely where it happened. Almost all of the lionfish around the Caribbean and Atlantic can be traced back to around 8 strains of DNA. So 8 starting fish. The next slide I'm going to go to is a progression slide. It'll go from 85 to 2013, showing the spread of the lionfish around from Florida. The important thing to note is that the movement of these fish is not from persons carrying them around, but basically they're just following the currents. The egg sacs for these fish float on the surface. Then when they hatch out, they, I would assume, get in with sargassum weed and other structure floating around the thing following the currents, and then they've moved all the way around. And then of note, at 2008, you'll see that the Cayman Islands comes into this. So just give that a second. Once they were established, they very quickly, exponentially just exploded once they got going. But they followed up the East Coast there and then over to the Bahamas, and then that brought them into the Caribbean. But you can basically see now they are everywhere and spreading, still spreading quickly, continuing to spread down South America as well. The only place that they seem to stop is they don't like cold water, so they've stopped about Maine on the East Coast, and they disappear. They do sight lionfish up there, but then they disappear around the winter, and then we'll see more coming towards summer, more young ones as the more egg sacs do continue to flow up with the Gulf Stream. But they're a problem for everyone. All right, and why should we care? We caught the first 2 fish in 2008. They were reported, one in Little Cayman, one on Grand. The DOE sent divers over and removed those fish. But by 2009, in only a very short time, they've just exploded. Like I said, once you have a few to breed, they exponentially just expand, and they've become almost uncontrollable. One company in East End alone has turned in over 8,000 fish since that 2009, registered those kills with the DOE. They are ravenous predators. We did a couple of tests early on, putting a very small 3 to 4 inch fish into a tank, start feeding it guppies. That fish ate until his stomach almost became transparent. You could actually see the eyes and heads of the other fish in his stomach, even though it's not very thin skin. It would stretch itself that much. Stop feeding it in the evening. In the morning, it was ready to go again. So they will constantly eat. This is one of the fish, just one example of the stomach contents on a lionfish taken on a cull. That one obviously found the same species, found a school of fish, but more frequently we find 4 to 5 different species in each stomach. We have since at some of the tournaments even found stomachs with more fish than that in it in one go. You can also see the egg sacs here. This fish is also producing, getting ready to drop a couple of egg sacs out. Also, because they're new to the area, they don't have any or very few native predators. Very recently, there's been a video going around of a grouper chasing down a lionfish and eating it. Those incidents are very few and far between. We still have a long way to go for nature to balance this out. So right now, man is still the only predator that they have that are really doing any significant thing in controlling them. Groupers do eat a few. This is a very early picture in the invasion. You'll notice this grouper was eating one backwards. He then sat on the bottom for quite a long time because I think he got a lot of the spines in him out. The groupers are now learning on a few other fish that if they're going to eat them, they turn them around and eat them head first so that the spines on top fold down. And speaking of the spines, the one big thing that Cull and DOE are pushing is that these fish are not poisonous. When you hear the word poisonous, nobody wants to eat them. These fish are actually, they're not poisonous, but they have venomous spines. The spine is covered with a sheath, the brown skin you can see hair pulled back. Inside that sheath is a very sharp needle-like tip on there, and the poison itself is a gel that is surrounding that needle. So if you're stung, the deeper it goes, the more of that goes into you, rubs off on the tissue in your flesh, and that is what hurts. It's not an injected poison. You're not going to get like a snake. There's no venom sac or anything on the bottom. And this is your typical lionfish. It has 13 spines. All these ones up here, you can see the sheath is back on this one. 13 spines at the top are venomous, 2 in the pec fins, and 2 near the anal fins. We have found a few fish that have 3 or 4 down here, but they're usually underdeveloped and just slight variations with nature there. But that's the ones you got to watch out for. Once those are trimmed off, your fish is very easy to clean and very tasty. And then an important thing is, and I found this out the hard way, the venom on those spines is very active even after a couple of hours. We did some early culling, and we had some fish in an ice chest, hour and a half, I would say. Got them back to the DOE. We were taking some pictures. I very stupidly picked up a tray without a glove on, tilted it for someone to take a picture. Fish slid down, and that was my first experience with the venom. It does hurt a lot. One of the most dangerous things about these things is how fast they can reproduce. A fish less than a year old can reproduce. They can do it every 4 days, and each time they produce 30,000 eggs in 2 egg sacs. Right from the start, the egg sacs are fairly clear once they let them go. They float on the surface. They don't match any really food for any other predators out there. And then as soon as they hatch out, even from larvae stage, they have venomous spines on them. So they're not common food or popular food for any predators out there so far in the Atlantic just because of that venom. It's much easier things to eat. And then the problem is that once they get on a reef or a section of reef, is that they eat so much that they become more abundant than the other native fish. This is a picture sent to us. I think we got it from Nowhere Reef, not 100% sure. But there's 2 questions here. Is one, what do you see? That's easy, lots of lionfish. The more important question is, what don't you see? And that's anything else. There are very few little species off in the corner here which are hanging further off the reef. The lionfish like to stick to the rocks to feed. And those ones out there are the only ones on that reef besides lionfish. And unfortunately, we don't have any evidence yet that they're preying on each other. So when they do run out of other stuff, they move reef. They move to where they can find more food and just continue the process. We are finding these lionfish as well. The other dangerous thing is they can be anywhere. 6 inches of water inside the South Sound in these little blowouts. Onto the edge of the blowouts, we were catching 1 and 2 inch fish with nets. But you can also get these fish out. They've been sighted out to 1,000 feet deep in the Bahamas by submarine. And the other thing is that you can get small and large fish shallow and small and large deep. There's not like some other species where the small fish will be born and hide in the mangroves in shallow and then move. We're finding every size fish in every depth of water. All right, so the goal is remove as many lionfish from our waters as possible. We're basically, hopefully, nature will catch up in the near future. Might not be in my lifetime, but the way I see it going. But this is what we're trying to do to try and help the reef survive, to sustain enough species on that reef that when they do balance out, the other species will be able to recover. So what the DOE started doing was to license residents and dive companies to catch and remove lionfish. We started with the dive companies, and the original license was for the use of nets. The Cayman Islands has fairly strict laws for the marine parks. Therefore, what got in the way was you are not allowed to take any marine life while on scuba. You're not allowed to take fish on the 8-inch in size limit. Of course, spare gun licensing laws. A lot of the islands' marine park replenishment zone or environmental zone where these fish were showing up, and you're not supposed to take marine life from those. So what we did was the Cayman Islands is very lucky compared to other countries in that there's a small clause in the marine conservation law that allows the Marine Conservation Board at the time to license individuals to do these things. So the license allows you to get around those laws. And like I said, we started off with nets, and at first it was fine. We had no problem for the simple reason that these fish weren't used to people as predators either. So they would just sit there. They're very bold fish. They would actually come towards you. Just take 2 nets, trap them between them, and then there was a way for putting them into a bag, which is taught by the DOE in a class. But very quickly, either through fair reflexes or them being really smart, they learned to avoid nets. If you had tried to catch a fish and missed it, that fish became impossible to catch shortly after. They'd see a diver coming with nets and run away, hide in the holes. So the next step we moved to was some handmade spears. We experimented with different single spike spears, which improved numbers coming up, or for catch, but still wasn't perfect because what could happen was the fish can come down the spear, and we had started to have people stung by fish on the spear as it kicked its way up towards their hands. We then switched to a triple prong spear, which is the current method in use, and also hard plastic containment devices in various forms. You'll see one in a video short in a few seconds here. Which allowed for safe containment and carrying of the fish while diving or snorkeling. The other big thing is we're really pushing both the DOE and CUL that to create a market for these fish, the only way we're going to beat them is to eat them. And therefore, some of the slogans on our T-shirts come out: eat them to beat them, kill them and grill them, and others. But the idea was we needed restaurants to add them to the menu, And this was one of the things I'll get into later that Cull came about. And of course, public education in schools and events like this, trying to spread the word about lionfish, the dangers, and what people can do to help. Now, we do have some problems as well. This has actually come up recently. But of course, we've got a lot of good intention or intending people out there who figured, let's try and speed up nature. And they started trying to feed groupers and snappers, sharks, eels, feed them the lionfish to get them to acquire a taste for them. Well, first of all, it is illegal under our whiz and lionfish laws, and the license does not allow for that. You're not allowed to feed any fish except in a whiz zone while on scuba or snorkeling. We have no evidence that it works, and in fact, what we've got recently is evidence that it does not work. I'll show you a video here right after this, and you'll see two divers sent this in. They were on a cull. They happened onto a site where an eel had been fed by other persons, and you'll see what happens basically. But what is causing is aggressive changes in predator behavior by those eels and sharks toward divers. They're actually rushing the spears. As long as the diver has a spear in his hand, those predators are seeing that person as a source of food, and it is becoming dangerous. We've had a couple of our members badly injured on the hands by eels. We've had people have probably seen last year the infamous shark attack video that went around. It wasn't an attack on the person, even though it was touted that way. That shark never went for anything but the spear. If you actually watch that video, it bumped his containment device once and then came to the spear 4 times, never actually looked at the diver. And so those basically are bad sites. So we are really pushing and enforcing both with the dive sites and private persons. It's actually a new condition on the licenses that you have to take a containment device into the water with you, and your fish have to be removed from the water. Okay. That should have started. Okay, that video should have started by itself. If it's not going to run, basically it does show 2 divers with the containment devices that you can see up here. And basically what happens is they are hunting lionfish, and an eel shows up. And this eel just comes straight at them, not so much because of the actual fish in the water. I'm going to go in. Okay, played earlier. I'll keep working on it. Okay, no problem. But anyway, basically what this video was going to show you was an eel that had no interest in not so much the scent of the fish or coming at the divers themselves, but the containment device. And what happens is they shoot this lionfish, it gets away, or he misses it, the first diver. Second diver, they see the eel coming. They rise up and back away, let the eel circle through the area and swim away. He goes, hides himself in the rocks. They think he's gone. One of the divers goes back down and takes a shot at the lionfish. He doesn't actually get the lionfish. But this is the point we're making, is that just the sound of the spear, all of a sudden that eel is back on him. It just comes out of nowhere. They're forced to almost retreat to the surface, which can be very dangerous for divers if any diver knows. But they have to rise up. I think they go about 30, 40 feet up towards the surface to get this eel to turn around. They also had to drop their containment devices. And eventually in the video, you see the eel actually go into the containment device as it's dropping and pull one of the lionfish out. He figures out where they are. But his initial attacks, or not attacks, but I mean approaches, it does scare the divers, so I'm sure they're calling it attacks. They're coming at the diver with the spear, not so much the fish itself. So it's just bad behavior changes that are coming about. Now, the good side is that consistent efforts on sites, especially by initially by the dive companies, they did an amazing job removing fish from the sites that they dive on a frequent basis. The only problem is it's only the sites they dive on a frequent basis. So we had to figure out another way to get to the areas that aren't dove. And basically we came up with, and also it's been published by NOAA and Reef. They've sent around a lot of stuff saying tournaments are the best way to go because they remove a large amount of fish in a short amount of time from those areas. And as said in my bio, Jason Washington from Ambassador Divers, he did the first 6 tournaments along with help from DOE with the way stations and stuff. And you can see they turned up pretty good numbers. The first tournament is really impressive at 507 because that was done by nets, a nets-only tournament. The Spears came later, and they started off doing a good job. 2012, he got a little bit busy work-wise and asked me to come in and help do the last one for 2012. And with me not knowing what to do and bringing in other people to help in different areas, we formed CUL, the Cayman United Lionfish League. We decided to get a little bit more formalized through this tournament. Season greetings was our first one, so being at Christmas time. It was held at Cayman Bay, and right off the bat, we knew these things could work because what this tournament turned into was our highest scoring tournament. We also, this is the other important thing, is leaving small fish or taking small fish. There's a lot of divers who in a tournament or anywhere else will pass up the small ones. We can't eat them, we can't do anything with them. But the important part for us here is that those fish will eat 50, 60, 100,000, 200,000 fish to get to be a big edible fish. So it's just as important, and we wanted to push that in our tournaments, that it was just as important to take the small fish as the big fish. And this is actually one team, my team. That's actually me. We set and hold the 9 smallest records in the CUL tournament system for the moment. The other thing is we wanted to spread the word. My brother will never forgive me for putting that photo on there. Spread the word of how good this lionfish is to eat. I mean, it is a very tasty fish. The only thing you can do wrong with it is over-season it because all you taste is the seasoning. It's a very light, sweet, flaky fish. Thomas Tennant from Michael's Genuine came on board right from the start and has hosted several of the tournaments. And he's an awesome chef. They serve it in Michael's on a consistent basis. He will buy lionfish from anyone that brings it to him. He's really helped our cause over the last few years. So in that tournament, we got 1,365 fish in 2 days. It still stands as our biggest tournament. But it was one important reason, and I get back to it later, but the fact was what happened here was there was a nor'wester blowing. So the normal north and west dive sites that the dive companies work, no one could get to them. Everybody went south where just happens to be not many dive sites and nobody dives. And this brought up a very important point, is that those areas are still full of lionfish no matter how good we do on the sites that are dove on a frequent basis. We have to hit those areas that aren't getting touched. Our next tournament, he went from eating them to shooting them. We also instigated, that's the fish with the spines off. In all our tournaments now, the fish have to be de-spined when they're brought in. We continued to set small fish records, and the fish started getting bigger. We're not quite as big on average as the Bahamas yet, but we're getting there. The other thing we did was we started getting larger corporate sponsors. This was Home Gas. A.L. Thompson also provided a lot of prizes for these events. So the prizes got bigger. We got more teams to come out and more people eating lionfish in a variety of ways. How our tournaments work is that we hold them at a restaurant, usually somewhere near the water, and the restaurant has to agree to give out free samples to the public and to our participants. So they provide 3 or 4 lionfish are prepared in 3 or 4 ways, and it's all given out free. They make their money back by the fish they get from the tournament for future use, as well as we do a pretty good happy hour at the end of these things. Everybody sticks around. That tournament, 974 fish. Before we went up to the next. We averaged through 2013, we averaged about 1,000 fish from 13 to 2 tournaments with 900. And that seemed to be about the average we're going to get, even no matter how many more, if we had a few more teams or how the weather went. The other thing tournaments we can do is this one was hosted by RBC Wealth Management, and they actually turned it into a team building event for their office. They came out and helped us. And then, of course, like I said, each place turns out some really good food options, and it is one of the big important things for us is that they produce lots of food to give out as free samples. The other thing these tournaments do is they help with other things in the environment. We've added a prize for most fishing line from the reef. To date, we've removed about 16 kilograms of monofilament. We've only done that in 3 tournaments, so it was pretty good for all of our colors to bring that much line in. The other thing is it allows us to fulfill requests from scientific bodies. NOAA had asked, was doing a study on Ciguatera poisoning because there had been a rumor or reports down in Eastern Caribbean of finding Ciguatera in lionfish. We wanted to get that scare gone as soon as possible. Ciguatera, if you don't know, is what's locally called barra poisoning, or the same thing, same type of poisoning in fish. So what we did during the tournament as well is we got teams to bring one big fish from different areas all around the island so we could cut samples, send them off to NOAA and have them tested. And it allowed us to clear up the myth that even if they did find it was in such small amounts, it's not harmful to humans. Next tournament, weather kind of knocked us down. It was only 367 fish. We had a bad storm that weekend. But it was an important tournament because Foster's Food Fair came on as our corporate sponsor, our main sponsor. For everyone who buys the little plastic bags in Foster's or the green bags, and you think, where is that money going? It now goes to Cull. That money is turned over by Foster's, $20,000 a year, and it sponsors the cash prizes for 3 tournaments a year. We're going to try and squeeze in 4 shortly as they make more money on those things. But also CETA joined in and is helping us spread the word through the tourism sector as well and getting us help. The other thing we find a lot of the other things we can help science with is just finding all the other species you find in lionfish. All of these fish and shrimp were removed from fish's mouths basically in the tournament when they were being weighed. And then we have the one exotic one. That was one that no one knew they would go after, but we found a small ray in a lionfish taken on the wall. And of course, the other thing is tournaments are a good way to do this because they're fun. A lot of people come just for our quirky T-shirts and our logos. We've started putting together very large amounts. And of course, being able to offer checks for cash prizes doesn't hurt. Our last tournament now was the first one of this year, basically. For those who still haven't done their New Year's resolutions, there's a couple of good ones. Come and join Cull. Check out our Facebook page. But basically, it was a very successful tournament. We had the news crews there to spread the word about it. We caught a lot of fish, put on filleting demonstrations, and also they're filleting fish to go into the restaurant to be cooked up right there at Fresh that day. But anyone that came by could be taught how, we happily go over a fish and show you how to de-spine, fillet the fish. Again, lots of good food put out. This was down at Macabuca and Crack Conch. Lots of good food. And again, we jumped above the 1,000 mark and got 1,065 fish. And the important thing with this is that it was another tournament where we all had to go south. This was another nor'wester blow-in earlier this year. And basically, we again had to go down to areas that hadn't been culled since that first tournament in 2012 in December. And basically what we found is those fish are definitely replenished. The same areas were hit by the same teams. They went to their same spots, and they found just almost as many fish as they had back then. This is more or less our cull team. We've actually added about 5 members after this tournament. But basically what, cull just as a thing, what we are is a collection of scuba divers, fishermen, I guess you could say scientists from the DOE, spear fishermen, free divers. And we basically decided to come together and try and save our reefs by taking these lionfish off of them, continuing the effort, and it seems to be a good way to do it. Now, we can only manage as one group tournament every 3 months. We all do have jobs, and we have to take some time to put one together. So we are currently encouraging and trying to get other groups to start tournaments or start. Some of the dive companies put on one-day culls. Like I said, Ocean Frontiers in East End does an excellent job, Dive Tech, where you can go on these dives. If you're a scuba diver, you can actually do a short course with them if you haven't done the DOE course, and you can head out on their once-monthly dives. Those monthly dives, they pick up 200 to 300 fish, I think now is their average. So they're doing an excellent job as well. But any way to get these fish out of the water. And basically what you can do is you can come and give the DOE a call or check us online and see when the next class is. You do have to do an hour and 10-minute or so class. You get the license first for nets, and then you can eventually put in your application for spears. We're a little low on those right now, but and the other thing is help us spread the word. These fish are good to eat. Come out to our tournaments. We do have a tournament on April 11th and 12th at the Georgetown Back-A-Deer. Again, free samples. Come by on the Saturday and Sunday between 4 and 6. And see, if you haven't tasted them yet, give them a try. I guarantee you'll be looking to eat them again. And then the customer sparing programs that go on through CETA. These dive companies that are listed here, basically they're signed up to a program where they keep a collection of spares. You can, once you got your license, you can actually go and scuba dive with them on their different culls on their dive trips and use their spares under their supervision. It allows you to go culling even if you can't, if you don't have the time to do the full license or go on a regular basis, or we're short of spares. So, but you can still go out with these companies on very cheap trips. They drop the prices on them for anyone who wants to cull. And basically, I tried to shorten it so without the video. And basically, I guess, does anyone have any questions? Oops. So. I pretty much said the question was how many spares I think are issued in Cayman at the moment. Right now, I think the number is just under 500 spares. That's privately ones as well as the dive companies. Like I said, the dive companies do have bundles of spares where you can go and dive with them and use theirs.
Where's your favorite place to have lionfish ceviche?
Ceviche. I'm a little bit of a, I guess I'll definitely lean to one restaurant, and that is still Michael's Genuine, for the simple fact that I've had input in how that ceviche is made. I'm good friends with Thomas, and we actually redid it, and the current chef, and they've just redone their ceviche recipe, and it is awesome. But Georgetown back there actually does a really good one. Macabuca now does an excellent one. They also have a really nice, like, full dinners where you get 2 fillets, pan-roasted, basically lionfish, which is really good.
You may have mentioned this before, but what is the estimate of the current number of lionfish in Cayman waters, at least the regions that's dangerous, deemed to be dangerous for the other fish?
Unfortunately, I don't have that info. We've never done I don't think we've done a per acre thing. I will say early on, and this has increased quite a bit. I know a study was done in the Bahamas where they redid a study of just basically counting fish along a linear kilometer of reef. It was done in the Red Sea where they're naturally from. In the Red Sea, they counted 90 fish per kilometer. When they did it in the Bahamas, and this is years ago, they were already at 400 and plus fish a kilometer. And that will have increased. That's probably double the time. So if not increased by double. I just don't think there's enough food to fully double it, but it's going to be really high right now. They're everywhere. We drop on some sites. Well, I'll give you an example. My team is a free diving team. We go into the North Sound on a regular basis to get small ones, basically. We stick to the inside the coast. We can drop down on a rock that's only 2 or 3 feet square, roughly in size, in the middle of a grass area, because that's the only structure. And we've removed as many as 16 young lionfish on a rock that size. Washing machines that people put out for lobsters, I've shot up to 38 lionfish on one, just because it's out in the grass where there's no other structure. So they are everywhere, and they are plentiful.
One question, are sharks and eel also hunting lionfish by themselves, or just the spared ones from the divers?
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, there's no evidence right now that they are doing it by themselves. We have individual cases. I heard about Little Cayman. I think there's one filmed over there where an eel actually just hunted just onto the divers, went and caught a lionfish. We've got the one recently out with grouper. When they were first shown the sharks, they went to the Bahamas where they normally do the shark feeding, and they were feeding them lionfish with the spines. The sharks would grab them and spit them back out, even though they were eating everything else. Even though it was dead fish, they would just mouth them and let them go within a second or two. So as a prey species or a regular prey, no, unfortunately not.
What age do you have to be to start culling and stuff like that with your group?
Okay. I know Bradley has licensed some school groups, I think with parental permission. That's for the nets. There's actually, I think the international school, one of the teachers there actually takes their students out. We see them on the water. And I think Prep High was doing it as well. Teacher there taking their older classes out for a half day on a Friday and actually doing it as a exercise thing. But for the spares, the same as, to move to spares, same as spare gun license, you'd have to be over 18. But I don't know what's the youngest, 15 or so. Yeah, with parental permission, you can get the license and the, for the netting part, quite a bit younger.
You had mentioned that the spines were venomous, but not poisonous. But if you had or if you got stung, you still needed to see the doctor.
Absolutely. The only treatment right away for these is hot water. In fact, I can tell you most painkillers don't work. I heard that in the hospital now they automatically go to morphine. Tylenol and Advil definitely don't touch it. But the important thing is to get hot water, not scalding. We have had some people burn themselves. As hot as you can normally take it and leave your hand in there. When I was stung, it took almost a little over an hour and a half to get the pain to completely stop. Every half hour, we took it back out of the hot water, just kept replenishing it just to try. It used me as a guinea pig, basically. Still hurts? Absolutely. Back in. Within a few seconds, the pain would ease right away again to a dull throb. But it took an hour and a half for that to go away. And then for the next day or two, my hand felt, I guess, the same way you would feel after a bad fever. Slight ache and pains with movement, but after that, no real pain. Some people react worse. We've had persons that blister up quite a bit, and they've had to actually remove all the skin to get down at the stuff. at the venom. It does like a necropsy type thing where it actually eats away the flesh and the skin connection. But a lot of people, that's the minority. Most people will, I know a lot of people who've been stung like myself 3-4 times, and hot water takes care of it. We even got one claim that soaking it in vodka works faster, but I haven't tried that.
Any other questions? All right, please give him a hand.
Thank you very
It
much.
was a great presentation.